Good morning, y'all. Welcome to another video on Ludico Arms channel. So what we've got going on today on the old Cherokee here, if you recall, we put a new or a rebuilt steering gearbox on this thing from the parts store. Well, that turned out to be a mistake because took about 2 or 3 days and it's every bit as crunchy as the old gearbox was. So you can see we've got the air box pulled out and we're working on getting that gearbox swapped out. But that's not what this video is going to be about. There's the brand new gearbox, not a rebuild, brand new. Came from USA Standard Gear. There's the part number if you need it. So I'm going to swap this gearbox out and then I'll bring y'all back. This video is we're going to put a new power steering pump on, because this is the original pump and it's been making more and more noise and getting very, very weak. So we're going to go ahead and replace it while we're replacing this steering gear. And then we'll bleed it out and be good to go, knock on wood. So let me go ahead and get this steering box swapped out. I'm not going to film that because if you need to know that, I've already got a video on swapping the steering box on the channel, so you can look that one up. And in the meantime, I'm going to swap this gearbox out and I will bring you back once I get that done and we get ready to swap this power steering pump out. So we'll be back with that. Alright, y'all, so I got my new steering gearbox installed. All my lines are back on, all the linkages are hooked back up. Again, if you need a video on how to swap out the steering box, I have one. Search the channel. I already did a video on it. This was just replacing a bad rebuilt part with a hopefully good new part. So now we're going to do the power steering pump. So since I've already had the steering gear off, my pump is basically pretty much empty. The lines are empty because I took the lines off down at the gear and let it all drain in that drain pan right there. So if you're doing just a power steering pump, you want to be aware that when you get to the part where you pull these lines off, you're probably going to have oil come out of there. So if that's the case, what you can do for this return line is get a vacuum cap that will fit, because basically it's a barb sticking out the back of the pump right there. And if you look at your new pump, you'll see right there that fitting. So the hose pops on there, and you could actually, if you needed to, you could take this cap off of here, and when you pull the hose off, you can put that on there, and that'll help keep some of that oil from dumping all over your suspension and gearbox and stuff, because it's going to be unavoidable. When you pull these lines off, you're going to drip oil on some stuff, so just be prepared for that. So the first step to pulling this power steering pump, we're going to have to pull the belt off. So you got right underneath of this power steering pump pulley, there is an adjuster pulley, and it's got a 15mm bolt in the middle of it. It takes a 15mm wrench. I'm not that good with the metric bolt sizes. And then over here is your adjustment bolt. So to loosen the belt, you can take your 15mm wrench and put it on that pulley right, see if I can get it in the screen there, right there, and loosen that bolt in the center of that pulley. Because basically when you turn the adjuster, it moves that pulley up and down. And the bolt in the center of it is what keeps it tight. So you want to loosen that off a couple of turns, like so. And then move over here. Right here is the bolt that you've got to turn to tighten or loosen the belt. So I got a swivel socket so I can make it around my temperature sensor. Put that on there, and let me grab my ratchet here. Sorry about that. All right, so we've got our adjustment bolt right here. We've got our bolt loose in the center of the pulley. So now we'll loosen this up. Now I went under there and sprayed that adjustment bolt with some Croil oil earlier to make this easy. But as you loosen out that belt's going to start getting loose. So what I'm going to do now is put my battery powered one in here to run this up. And so now the belt's loose. So I have a new belt to go back on this, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this belt completely off of here. Like so. So now our belt's off, and we'll come over here, and our next step is going to be take these lines, 2 lines off. So this threaded line in the top is a 5/8 wrench. And this, I believe this is an O-ring fitting in here, if I remember correctly. So we'll just unscrew that, pull it out. Yeah, make sure when you pull it out that you got the O-ring with it. Don't leave the O-ring down in the pump. So we'll just lay that to the side for now. And if I hadn't emptied or drained all these lines earlier when I pulled the pump off, then you would have a lot more oil leaking. But since I already did that, let me go grab my pliers for this other line back here. It's got a spring clamp. I'll be right back. All right, so your return line here has got a constant tension clamp on it, so you just squeeze the tabs together, and I usually just slide it down and let it stay on the hose there. And then you can pull that hose off of the pump, give it a little twist, and she'll pull right off of there. Should get a rag to catch any juice. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right, and we'll just lay that back there like that for now. Like I said, if you are just doing the pump, there'd be oil pouring out of here right now, so be aware of that. Once you get those lines off, all that's left is you've got 3 bolts holding the pump on. One here, and there's another one Let me see if I can get this where you can see it. Here we go. There's another one right up underneath here. So in order to get those off, they have provided holes in this pulley that you can stick a socket through and get on those. But in order to do it, generally you got to take this plastic fan off of here. So if I remember correctly, the last time I did this, I had to pull this pump off because it bolts to the intake manifold, and I pulled it off to when I was replacing the exhaust manifold. And if I remember correctly, I worked around that fan because I didn't want to pull it. So let's see if we can get it off of there without having to pull that fan. That fan is brittle plastic and generally not super strong. Now, I like to start, yeah, there's that bolt. Now you can see it. Let's see if I can get this light just right. So it's right. Let's see, then I'm blocking the light. Let me put a wrench on it in there. Yep. All right, so that wrench is on that bolt, that bottom bolt. And so I start with the bottom bolt, and that way, once I get it loose, if I remember, and it's been a while since I did the exhaust manifold, but if I remember correctly, once I got that thing turning, I could spin it out with my fingers. So we'll go ahead and see if we can ease it on out of there. It takes 13 millimeter, and you know, if you'd rather, you can pull that fan out so you can fit your socket up in there and your ratchet. I do not have a depending on how this goes, we may have to regroup, but this is getting looser now, so we may be able to spin it out of there. I just thought of something. I'll be right back. Let me go check something. Okay, so I found one of my 1/4 inch drive 13 millimeter sockets will fit without me having to remove the plastic fan. So we've got that stuck through the hole, as you can see. And we're going to run this bolt on out. It's always a game to play getting in these things. these all the way out, but you do, because you got the front of the bracket for the adjuster. It's kind of sandwiches between them. So there we go. Okay. So as you can see, the pump sandwiches between the intake manifold and the bracket for the belt adjuster. And so we'll just pull that on out of there. And I've got a new pump here. Now, when you go to buy a new pump, they sell them in all different fashions. They sell them the pump by itself, and you have to take your old reservoir off and put it on the new pump, and your old pulley off and put it on the new pump. Or they sell them with the reservoir but not the pulley, sell them with the pulley but not the reservoir, or they sell it complete with everything, which is what I bought, because it's just easier that way, and it's really not that much more expensive to do it that way. So let me get this unboxed and ready, and I'll bring you back to go back in with it. Okay, so I've got a new pump out. Something to think about. If you buy the pump with the pulley and everything on it, when I pulled it out of this sack that it came in, you can see there's oil in that, preservative oil, and this pulley was covered in it. So I took the old brake cleaner and sprayed it all down, cleaned all that oil off of there, because you don't want to put a new belt on there or put your old belt on there with it covered in oil. So as they say, assembly is the opposite of disassembly. So take your new pump, slide it in here in between your bracket, and get your bolts holes lined up. Something in that neighborhood there. And make sure, once you get it sitting there where it's close, you can get your bolts, and you know, you gotta get them through the hole in the pulley, and then turn that so that you can get your bolt inside of your hole, and you'll have to jiggle it around to get it to go on in there. Get it started, but don't tighten it in. Don't start tightening them fully until you can go ahead and start it, but until you get all three bolts in, you don't want to tighten them, because you might be out of line and make it harder to get the other bolts in. But you can run it down fairly close, finger tight. Get your next one, and again, you gotta get it wiggled in here. And like I said, if you take your fan off, it does make this easier, but I just don't like doing it if I don't have to, because all right, so there's that one. Get it started in its hole. We'll give it the old German torque. Good and tight, but not broken, and call it good. All right. So we've got our pump mounted again. And now we need to hook our lines back up. So we'll come around the back here. And we got our return line right here that we got to hook up. So we'll pull the cap off. Very important, don't try to put the line on over the cap. And we'll shove our line back on there. Then take our pliers, get our clamp here, put it back up where it goes, like so. And we're going to come back around here. See if I can get this camera set up right. Y'all bear with me for just a sec. My tripod's wanting to play games. All right. So now we got the pressure line here, and we got to pull this plug out of here. Pull that out. And then we'll take our pressure line, bring it back over here where it goes, making sure that our O-ring is still in place. And we'll get the threads started, and then take our 5/8 wrench, tighten it down. You want to make sure as you're tightening it, you're not pulling the hose up against anything where it's going to rub. And these don't have to be super tight because they're O-ring fittings, but you don't want it coming loose either. All right, so there we go. Now we need to get our new belt on and also put our air box back in. I had the air box out for the to do the steering gearbox, so I'm going to go ahead and slap it back in, and I'll bring you back when we go to put the belt back on. Let me get my air box back in real quick. Be right back. All right, so I'm going to get this fan belt back on. I'm not going to film it because it's going to be impossible for me to hold the camera and use both hands to get this belt routed around. Basically, once you get the belt routed, you should have a chart, look something like this somewhere on your vehicle, that'll tell you how to route it. Get it on there, and then what you'll do is you'll tighten that bolt up that we took loose before, the adjustment bolt, and get your belt tension right, and then finally tighten that pulley, the bolt in the center of the pulley. So I'm going to do a separate video on how to check the belt tension on these with a cricket gauge, but right now I need to get this done. I'm running out of time, so I'll be right back once I got this belt routed. All right, I'm going to show y'all real quick how this cricket gauge works. So I've got the belt tension, and the thing you got to know about these Cherokees is the belt tension on them is way tighter than you think it should be. A new belt should be 180 to 200 on the gauge, pounds. So the way this gauge works, it's got a little bar right here, and there's a scale on it. And one side is pounds and the other side is kilograms. But you want to push this bar down, so you'll see it sticking out right there at the bottom. And then this pad right here, you can do this. You can either hold it like this, or you can put your finger in the thing. Either way, what you got to do is get this on the belt, like so, in between the pulleys. Hopefully you can see that. Apologies, y'all, the battery went dead. Okay, so holding it either like that or with your finger in there, where you're only pressing down on that green part right there. Then you've got to get it. Now I'm going to hold it like this so I can show you where on the belt. You've got to get it just like that, in between those two pulleys, and then you press down on that green part. So get it in between, and then you'll hear it click. Sounds like a torque wrench. And then you bring it up and you read the scale. So right there on the pounds scale, you read it wherever the green part is going down in. So you put your finger there, and that's right at about 180. So I'm going to tighten this down just a hair more. I don't want to go too much. And when you get to a certain point, it changes drastically, so. And then I'm just going to check it again. And now we're right on about right between 180 and 190, and I'm going to call that good. So once you get that belt tension, and by the way, this gauge, this tool, is it's called a cricket belt tension gauge. You can get them, Gates sells them. It's number 91132. Same Gates that sells hoses and belts. So with these serpentine belts on these, they're kind of in between. You know, they're like the old V belt. You got to adjust them manually, but it's a serpentine belt. It's basically before they came out with the spring tensioners that you have on cars now. So biggest thing is just make sure you get it in the right neighborhood, and you'll know it if it's too loose, because it'll start squalling, and then you'll have to tighten it up. So once you get that done, then you can just come in here and you want to tighten your pulley bolt down, and what that'll do is lock that in place. Now, I did a couple of things that I might not have filmed because I don't really know. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, but while I was putting the belt on, I checked all the rest of these pulleys, made sure I didn't have bad bearings, a shaft flopping around, you know, anything like that. And I did not, so that's good. All right. So now that is tight. Now what we've got left is to put oil in the system and bleed it. So we're going to have a lot of air in here because I replaced the steering gear too. So what I'm going to do is get my 2 jacks under here, up under the front, and jack the front end up. And then I'm going to put oil in that and steer the front wheels back and forth. Add oil, steer them back and forth. That'll start to purge some of the air out. And then once that stops purging air out, then I'll bump the starter over a little bit and purge some more air out. Basically, you want to try to purge as much air out of there before you go and crank this thing up. Because if you crank it up and it sucks air, you're liable to ruin that brand new pump. Air is definitely the enemy. So let me get my jacks set up and get my oil, and I'll bring you back and we'll bleed this. Okay, so I'm adding fluid to it and then very, very slowly turning the wheels to one side, and then I'll turn them to the other. And the reasoning is, if you fill that thing up and then turn this wheel real quick, you want to go nice and slow, because what's going to happen is, as you're doing this, it's going to push air out of that steering gear and out of those lines back up into that pump. So we want to go nice and easy, because that bubble, that air has to dissipate, otherwise it'll push oil out of the top of that pump. Alright, so we are all the way over to the left now, and we'll check in the pump again real quick and see how much oil is. Yeah, it's gone down a little bit, so we'll add a little bit more. Like I said, I would rather take my time and just do a little bit at a time than have this thing push oil out all over my brand new belt. Kind of defeats the purpose of having a brand new belt, if that happens. And you'll notice that I have the front wheels jacked up off the ground, so we're not fighting. Alright, so now we're going to go back the other direction. Basically, we're going to keep doing this until the fluid level quits dropping in the reservoir. So I'm not going to film all that, because that's going to be very boring. But once I get that part done, then I'll bring it back for when we crank it up and run the rest of the air out. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I have moved this back and forth a whole bunch of times, and I've got about a whole quart in that thing now. So now what I'm going to do is, I bumped it over a couple of times, and now I'm going to go ahead and let it crank up and then cut it right back off. So what we want to do is start purging air, but we don't want to run all that air back through the pump again. So let me set this here while I work over there. Now we'll check the fluid level again. Alright, right now it looks like our fluid level is still pretty good. So what I'm probably going to do is crank this up and turn it a little bit to one side or the other and see if we start making any bad noises. It looks like we've got most of the air purged out of the system now. Yep. I don't think there's much anything left in this. Alright, so that is that. We have purged the air out of the system, so basically what we'll do now is we'll take it for a little drive and then let it sit overnight and check it again. That'll give any bubbles that are trapped in the power steering fluid a chance to rise up out, and then we'll also check for leaks, but ain't no need to film all that because I'm pretty sure you know how to use a power steering pump cap dipstick. So that is it. That is changing the power steering pump. This one, I can tell you already, is way quieter than the one that was on here. It was starting to howl pretty good just without even being used, just at idle. So I am going to get this thing off of the jacks and go clean up. And we will see you in the next video. Hopefully this has helped somebody out, or, you know, entertained you in some way. And we'll see you next time. Appreciate y'all watching. Y'all have a good one.